Hotels promise comfort and safety, a home away from home. But for some, these spaces become the setting for their worst fears. The anonymity, the thin walls, and the knowledge of countless strangers before you can turn a simple stay into a nightmare. The following stories aren't about ghosts, but about real, chilling encounters that blur the line between reality and the unknown. These are 5 true hotel horror stories that might make you think twice before traveling alone. Sarah, traveling for work, checked into a hotel on the outskirts of Phoenix. She locked the door, set the deadbolt, latched the security bar, and wedged her suitcase against the door. Exhausted, she drifted off to sleep. Hours later, she woke with a start. Something felt wrong. She heard a soft, rhythmic scratching at the door. Then, the unmistakable click of the deadbolt turning, slowly, from the outside. She watched, paralyzed, as the door creaked open. A sliver of light cut into the darkness, but no one appeared. She slammed the door shut and called the front desk. Security arrived, but found nothing. She checked out the next morning, shaken and unable to explain what happened. Sometimes the things that terrify us most are the ones that defy all logic. Mark, a seasoned business traveler, checked into a historic Chicago hotel. After a late night, he locked up and went to bed, city lights casting faint shadows on the walls. At 3:17 a.m., he woke with the unsettling sense of being watched. The room was still, the door chained, the window locked. Then, at the foot of his bed, a shadow separated itself from the darkness. It was tall, impossibly thin, and darker than the rest of the room, a human shape with no features. Mark froze, unable to move or breathe. The shadow stood motionless as if observing him. Then it glided, not walked, across the room, blocking the city light as it passed the window. It reached the far wall and simply dissolved, merging into the plaster. Mark sat paralyzed, heart racing until he finally grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. The room was empty, the door was still chained, no one was there. He didn't sleep again that night, waiting for dawn with the lights on. Mark never found an explanation for what he saw. He never stayed in that hotel again. Sometimes the scariest things aren't what you hear, but what you see, and can't explain. In room 409, Mark learned that some shadows have substance, and some hotel rooms hold secrets that never check out. He left Chicago with a story he'd never tell at a business dinner, but he always checked the corners of his room after that night, because once you see something impossible, you never sleep the same way again. Mark's story is a warning. Not all hotel guests are alive, and not all shadows are empty. Sometimes they're watching you, waiting for you to notice. Jessica and Tom, celebrating their anniversary, stopped at a remote mountain lodge. With no cell service, their only connection to the outside world was an old landline phone. At 1:45 a.m., the phone rang, shattering the silence. Tom answered, expecting the front desk, but heard only a raspy whisper. The voice didn't greet him, it just whispered their names. Jessica! Tom! Tom demanded to know who was calling. The line was silent except for shallow breathing. Then the whisper returned. I see you, Jessica, Tom. Terrified, Tom slammed the phone down and called the front desk. The night clerk checked the call log. No calls had been placed to their room, not from inside or outside the hotel. The system didn't even allow external calls to guest rooms. According to the hotel, their phone had never rung. Jessica and Tom spent the rest of the night wide awake, every creak and gust of wind setting them on edge. They checked out at dawn, unable to shake the feeling that someone, or something, had known exactly where they were. Sometimes the scariest messages come from nowhere at all, and sometimes the line between safety and danger is as thin as a phone cord. Jessica and Tom never returned to that lodge. They never found out who or what called them that night, but they never forgot the sound of their names whispered in the dark. In the wilderness, some things are better left unanswered, and some calls should never be picked up. Chloe, on her first solo trip to New Orleans, stayed in a charming old hotel. Her room had an ornate mirror above the bathroom sink. The first morning, she found a single handprint on the mirror. Strange, since she'd cleaned it the night before. She wiped it away, thinking nothing of it. The next morning, another handprint appeared, fresher and more defined. Chloe checked her phone. She'd photographed the spotless mirror the night before. She was the only one with a key, and housekeeping hadn't been in. On her third morning, she found the mirror covered in dozens of frantic handprints, overlapping and smeared. It looked as if a crowd had pressed against the glass, desperate to get through. Terrified, Chloe grabbed her purse and ran, leaving her belongings behind. She never returned to that room. The hotel's charm had turned sinister overnight. Chloe's story is a reminder. Sometimes the past lingers in old places, and sometimes it tries to reach out. She never found out who or what left those prints, but she never stayed in a room with an old mirror again. Some reflections are better left unseen, and some visitors never check out. Chloe's trip was unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons, and she never traveled without a nightlight again. Liam, backpacking through Eastern Europe, checked into a grim hotel near a train station. He was given a heavy brass key for room 217 at the end of a long, dim hallway. The room was bleak, but he just needed a place to sleep. After dinner he returned to the second floor, only to find room 217 was gone. Where the door had been, there was now just a stretch of faded wallpaper. No door, no number, not even a seam. Confused, Liam checked the floor and the hallway but found nothing. He held the key in his hand, certain he was in the right place. Panicked, he ran to the lobby and confronted the old man at the desk. The man glanced at the key and said flatly, "There is no room 217 in this hotel." He returned to his newspaper, refusing to say more. Liam's backpack, passport, and belongings were gone, locked in a room that, according to the hotel, never existed. He left the hotel with only the clothes on his back and a story no one would believe. Sometimes places vanish without a trace, and sometimes you're the only witness. Liam never found his things, or room 217, again. He learned that not all hotel rooms are meant to be found, and some doors, once closed, are gone forever. In the world of travel, some mysteries are never solved, and some rooms are best left undiscovered. A hotel room is a fragile bubble of privacy in a world of strangers. These stories remind us that safety is never guaranteed, no matter how many locks you use. The line between comfort and terror can be razor thin. Whether it's an impossible intrusion, a shadowy presence, or a room that vanishes, the fear is real. Next time you check into a hotel, you might double-check the locks, or wonder who stayed there before you. And as you lie awake, listening to unfamiliar sounds, remember, not every guest leaves. Thank you for listening. Stay safe out there and try to get some rest. Good night.